For decades, one message got repeated to every working American. Buy a car as soon as you can afford one. Buy a house as soon as the bank approves you. Those two purchases were treated as proof that you had made it. Nobody questioned the plan. Everybody just followed it because their parents followed it and their grandparents followed it before that. But something has shifted in the last few years, and almost nobody is talking about it out loud. A growing number of people are quietly choosing to skip both of those purchases, not because they cannot afford them, because they ran the numbers and realized owning less might actually make them richer. Stay with me for the next few minutes because by the end of this video, you will look at your own car payment and your own mortgage completely differently. This is not about giving up comfort. This is about understanding where your money is really going. What a car really costs you every year. Start with the car, because this is where the math gets uncomfortable fast. A new car in the United States today often costs somewhere between $35,000 and $50,000 once taxes and fees are added in. Most people do not pay that in cash. They finance it, which means on top of the sticker price, you're paying interest for 5 or 6 years straight. Then add insurance, then add routine maintenance, then add gas or charging costs, then add registration fees every single year. When you total all of that up, many drivers are spending $8,000 to $12,000 a year just to keep one car on the road. That is money leaving your bank account every single month, whether you drive that car once or 50 times. And here is the part almost nobody calculates. The moment that car leaves the dealership lot, it starts losing value. Within 5 years, most vehicles are worth roughly half of what you originally paid. You are not building an asset. You are slowly watching one shrink. The hidden hours. Your car sits completely idle. Here is the part that should really bother you. Studies on commuter driving patterns consistently show that the average personal vehicle sits parked and unused for roughly 95% of its entire life. Think about that number for a second. You are paying full price every single month for a machine that spends almost the entire day doing absolutely nothing. It sits in a driveway. It sits in a parking garage. It sits in an office lot collecting dust while you are inside working. You are not paying for transportation. You are paying rent on a giant metal object that mostly just sits there, depreciating in value the entire time you own it. Ask yourself honestly, how many hours your own car actually moved yesterday? For most people, the answer is somewhere around 1 or 2. The rise of on-demand shared transportation. Now here is where the shift becomes obvious once you start paying attention. Ride-sharing apps already let people get anywhere in most cities within minutes without owning a single vehicle. Car-sharing services are expanding into more suburbs and smaller cities every year. And self-driving technology is advancing quickly enough that several major companies are already running autonomous ride services in select cities right now. As that technology keeps improving and expanding, the cost of getting a ride on demand keeps dropping. People who once assumed they needed a car parked in their driveway are starting to realize they can get from point A to point B for a fraction of what ownership used to cost. And they never have to think about insurance premiums or maintenance bills again. No oil changes. No repair bills showing up out of nowhere. No monthly loan payment hanging over their head for 6 straight years. Why a house is no longer the only path to stability. The same shift is happening with housing, and it is even bigger. For generations, owning a home in the same city as your job was simply the plan. You picked a house near your office because you had no other option. That single requirement forced millions of people, into extremely expensive housing markets just to stay close to work. It forced people to stretch their budget past its breaking point for a small starter home just because it happened to sit near the right zip code. That forced requirement is disappearing fast. Once your job no longer depends on where you physically sit, every requirement built around that assumption starts to fall apart too. Remote work is rewriting where people choose to live. Remote and hybrid work arrangements have become permanent parts of the modern economy, rather than a temporary trend. Millions of professionals across the United States and Canada now do their jobs from wherever they choose. That single change is quietly rewriting where people decide to live. Instead of stretching their entire budget to afford a small home near an expensive city center, many workers are choosing smaller cities and towns where the exact same income stretches dramatically further. A software developer earning a big city salary can often buy a comfortable home outright in a smaller market for what a single year of big city rent would cost. That is not a small advantage. That is a complete reset of what financial stability actually requires. No crowded commute at 7 in the morning. No traffic jam. Eating an hour of your evening. Just more time and more money, staying in your own pocket. What happens when you redirect that money into investments? So follow the math with me, because this is where it gets exciting. If skipping a car loan and a massive mortgage frees up roughly $1,500 every single month, that money does not have to disappear. It can go straight into an index fund or a retirement account instead. $1,500 invested every month at an average historical market return can grow into well over $1 million across 20 years, thanks to compound growth working quietly in the background. That is not a guess. That is simple math anyone can verify with a basic compound interest calculator in under a minute. The people who choose to rent a smaller place and use ride sharing instead of financing a car are not falling behind everyone else. In many cases, they are the ones quietly building real wealth, while everyone else is busy making a car payment. Most people resist this idea the first time they hear it, and that reaction makes complete sense. Owning a car and owning a home have been treated as symbols of success for so long that questioning them can feel like questioning your own worth. But wealth was never actually built by owning the most stuff. Wealth was built by keeping more of what you earn and putting it somewhere it can grow. The car in your driveway does not care how hard you worked for it. It just keeps losing value, whether you admit that fact or not. Pause for a second and think about someone you know who seems to have it all. The newest truck, the biggest house. Now ask yourself how much of that is actually paid off. Very often the answer is almost none of it. There is a quiet cost sitting underneath both of these purchases that rarely gets discussed. It is called interest, and it works against you every single month. A typical auto loan today can carry an interest rate high enough that over the life of the loan, you end up paying thousands of dollars above the actual price of the car. A mortgage does the same thing, but on a much larger scale, over a much longer period of time. The bank earns more the longer you take to pay it back, while the asset you financed keeps losing value in the case of the car, or ties up your flexibility in the case of the house. Once you see that pattern clearly, it becomes very hard to unsee it. The 5-year advantage of owning less and investing more. 5 years from now, the gap between these two paths is going to be impossible to ignore. One person spends the next 5 years paying down a depreciating car and a mortgage on a house that barely fits their changing needs. Another person spends those same 5 years renting flexibly, investing consistently, and building an actual portfolio instead of a pile of debt. Same income, same starting point, completely different outcome. Owning fewer things is not about giving anything up. It is about redirecting money away from things that lose value the moment you buy them and into things that grow in value the longer you hold them. The old rule said, buy the car and buy the house as fast as possible. The new rule is simpler and far more powerful. Keep your money working for you instead of watching it sit parked in a driveway. 5 years from now, you will either be further ahead or further behind. The choice you make about a car payment and a mortgage today is quietly deciding which one it will be. None of this means you can never own a car or a home again. It simply means the timing and the reasoning behind that decision matter more than ever before. Buying a car because a payment fits into a monthly budget is very different from buying a car after comparing what that same money could become inside an investment account over the next 10 years. Buying a house because it feels like the expected next step is very different from buying a house once it actually makes financial sense for your income and your goals. The people who come out ahead over the next 5 years will not be the ones who own the most. They will be the ones who understood the real cost of ownership early enough to make a different choice while everyone else stayed on autopilot.